In this video, we're going to go over the top 5 problems with the Toyota RAV4 4th generation. And one thing that is not on the list is headlights. But you can see these need them, but that's because of the age, and that goes with any car. And let's not forget taillights in that factor with age. Look what happens. Sun damage, seals break, water gets in there. That's all with age. And luckily 1A Auto carries taillights and headlights for all different makes and models, so don't forget to check them out. But now let's get into the top 5. One of the biggest complaints is a starter, and that is for RAV4, even several generations. But guess what? The starter is not really the main problem. It's something else, and we'll get into that later. Number 1 happens to be the EVAP canister, which is located under the vehicle. There's a big plastic shield here. It's right in front of the gas tank, under the driver's seat. And this canister has charcoal in it, and it filters out the emissions going through the EVAP. And you have your purge vent solenoid right here. And around 100 to 110,000 miles, you'll start to get possibly a code. The codes start with PO 441, 442, or 446, and all has to do with the canister. If you get that code and you do a quick little scanner diagnostic, it's more than likely going to be this canister, so you need to replace it. So a good way to examine your canister is check for leaks first. All the plastic lines that go in, make sure the connectors are already on, all the way on. Plastic lines aren't broken. Same with the rubber vent hoses. Make sure they're not dry rotted and cracked. Sometimes they break right off. You want to give a good visual, make sure there's no problems. If there isn't, go ahead and replace that canister. Number 2 is head gasket issue. Now, I'm going to be fair here. I know Toyota's had their fair share of head gasket issues, but this is a 2.5, not the 2.4. So the first generation had valve seats that would drop out on them and could cause damage, and then you would see coolant or oil seeping out, a lot of oil burning. Then the next generation had the 2.4 and the head bolts ripped out. Now this is a 2.5, and what they found is just basically the head gasket breaks down in between the cylinders. So you might start off with a misfire, and it could be around 120, 150K, you're going to get a misfire. So PO 301, 302, 303, 304, because it's a 4-cylinder. The way to diagnose that is obviously pull the spark plugs. If you think it's a coil, swap it to a different cylinder, replace the spark plugs, and maybe replace the coils. But while you have them out, do a quick check on the coolant. If you notice that coolant level going down a lot, you can, and it has been done, you take all the cylinders out, put top dead center, and you can put pressure on the coolant and see if that cylinder has coolant seeping into it. Personally, I would check the coolant, keep an eye on it. You can check by the spark plug. There's a whole scenario you can get into, but to keep the most minor is mark that overflow tank, keep an eye on it. If you're adding coolant, check your tailpipe. First thing in the morning, you might see a little white puff of smoke come out. That means that it's starting to drop down into that cylinder. So that's number 2, so don't forget to keep a heads up on your head gasket. Issue number 3 happens to be throttle body. Basically, you're driving along, engine light might come on, and you pull a code, it's PO 121, and it has to do with the throttle body. The throttle position sensor on that, which is electronically controlled, gives no response. It has to do with the voltage, the PCM talking to it, and how much voltage it's putting out and giving back. So there's a sensor at your throttle body, and there's a sensor at the gas pedal, and they have to be in sequence. If they're not, there's no response from that throttle. Pretty common, like I said, code PO 121. And the throttle body is located right here at the end of this air hose off this air cover. And I'm going to take it apart so you can see it better. So now we have a good close-up of the throttle body. Here it is right here. That's your butterfly going into the intake. And that is the culprit right here. This is your throttle position sensor. It's all electronically controlled attached. So you would end up taking this throttle body out, putting a new one on, because this part comes with the throttle body. Some cars, possibly this one, it will need to be programmed. So you need to have someone capable of hooking up the scanner and programming this throttle body right into the PCM. Number 4, we're back at that starter issue that I talked about earlier. Now, what happens is basically you have a clicking sound. It doesn't start, and people go right for the starter. It is the starter, but it's not the result of it. What caused that starter to go bad is actually a bad ground. That's what they're notorious for. This negative cable, it's exposed in a lot of spots. You'll see green corrosion right here at the negative terminal where the cable goes into the actual bracket, and then down there on the secondary ground, and then over on the block you'll see a lot of corrosion too. So a bad ground can cause voltage haywiring, and you will damage the starter in the long run, but you have to do the starter with that negative battery cable. So that negative battery cable, if you follow it right down, it attaches right here to the transmission block, and you can see the corrosion in there. But what happens is it also gets corroded between the steel and that aluminum. So when you replace it, make sure you clean this terminal of the new cable and the block side. Just get a little scuffy in there with sandpaper, make sure it makes a good connection, and make sure you torque it right down. That leads us to number 5, the last one, and it is in the same area, so we'll go right into it. The transmission mount. Notorious for a couple of generations, actually. The rubber just rips on these, and you'll start feeling that bang when you put it in reverse or drive. And you can see real close-up of how it's torn. Right here, you can see that rubber is separated and torn from the metal bracket that it attaches. That is pretty common, and it's an easy fix. Don't forget to check out 1A Auto for the parts, because we carry those.